Okay, thanks very much, Igno, if you're still watching. Don't ask me where Yeastplume comes from, but that's the handle I go by. My actual name is Michael, so don't walk up to me and call me Yeastplume because it's weird. And I'm going to give you a little overview, kind of the state of Grin, the state of the project, where we are now, how we got here. Is it just this? Yeah, okay, so I'll talk about Grin the idea, Grin the project, Grin the community, Grin the technology, Grin the future, and Grin the t-shirt in that order of importance. Could you move on to the next slide? Okay. So, Grin the idea. Let me just have a look. Okay, so I guess the first question is, how did we all get here? Assuming most people in this room probably know something about Grin already. So I'm not going to go into huge detail on any particular topic, but as I'm presenting, I think I have enough time, so I'll take questions throughout. If you have any questions as I'm talking, just put your hands up. I prefer a bit of interactivity rather than you just listening to me. Okay, so Mimble Wimble. So that's kind of the thing that kicked off this entire project and the reason why we're here. I'm not going to give you a whole history lesson. I think most people are already kind of familiar with this. It's someone calling himself Tom Elvis Jedusor, which is the French anagram in the Harry Potter anagram for Voldemort. He dropped a paper onto Bitcoin Wizards IRC with a small insight that kind of built on some previous work that had been done. That, as I'll talk about a little bit, turned out to be quite an insight and allowed a Mimble Wimble blockchain to come into existence. So, move on to the next slide. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go into this into huge detail because there's plenty of information and literature on our site and everywhere about Mimble Wimble and how it actually works. But all I want to do is kind of point out what Mimble Wimble is and kind of the evolution or where it comes from. So we started off with something called confidential transactions, which was a paper. It was written by Greg Maxwell, and I think there's another contributor on it, and which gave us something called Peterson commits. It didn't give us Peterson commits, but it employs Peterson commits in order to allow us to hide values within a transaction. And that paper was written and put together, and it had kind of a sample transaction, how a transaction might be put together. And then the Mimble Wimble insight was just built on top of that. And it's a really, really small insight on top of that. It's that instead of having all your blinded values, your commits equaling 0 in a transaction, you can actually use something which we call an excess value. So it doesn't equal 0. The whole transaction actually equals another integer, which is kind of a function of private keys that are chosen, which allows you to choose which permits you to put together a blockchain that where ownership is proven. So it was a small insight on top of work that was already there, but it's an important one because it's where we get all of our the kind of nice things that you get in the Mimble Wimble blockchain, such as aggregation, cut through. It all just fits together very nicely with this insight. So is everyone following here at this point? Again, not going into too much detail at the moment. So, right, so moving on from there, so we have Grin, which is the project that we put together. The first question is probably why a new coin? Why do we need a new blockchain? Well, the fact is that a lot of kind of prominent people believe that Mimble Wimble is a good idea. It's definitely worth experimenting with. There's a lot of questions, were a lot of questions anyhow. Why not a sidechain? There's a few problems with that. First off, sidechains were kind of a mythical being up until fairly recently. Bitcoin itself is hard to change, so it's much easier to start a project from scratch. So you have complete control over it. You don't have to worry about convincing Bitcoin Core to support your sidechains, as well as concepts like fast sync, cut through, aggregation, all this stuff that really makes Mimble Wimble shine, but isn't really possible in the Bitcoin chain at the moment. And again, it needed a lot of experimentation. Still needs a lot of experimentation. We're doing that on a daily basis, pretty much. So that's why that's why we're here. That's why we have the Grin blockchain. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our goals as a project. Again, we've kind of been arguing about the mission statement, not arguing, but we have a few threads open. What are we about? What's our mission statement? What are we trying to achieve? So this is kind of only just my personal interpretation at the moment, so I'm speaking for myself here, but in general, Grin we want to build, obviously, a working Mimblewimble implementation. We want to focus on keeping it simple and minimal. Researching Mimblewimble tech, keep advancing it, obviously, that's kind of the overriding goal. And then, of course, we want to work towards privacy, censorship control, all of these things that you probably know about already, so I don't need to outline it, are important to Grin, and that's what the project is working towards. So Grin does not want to. Again, Grin, I hope that kind of the project tends to know its place in the world. It's one of the nice things actually about not having funders or people that are expecting money at some point. We can be honest about the state of Grin, where the project is at this point. We don't think we're the one and only true Mimblewimble implementation out there. We certainly won't be the last one. We might not even be the best one. We're certainly kind of in a great chain of chains, standing on the shoulders of Bitcoin and other work. Others will come after us. We're certainly not the gatekeepers of any word of Voldemort, because first off, because it was very short. So we don't have the compiled works of Satoshi like we do in Bitcoin. And again, we're any decision we make in the project, we want to be very sure that we're not unfairly rewarding a small group of people. And I think that's vital. So the upside of this, we have no ICO. There's no founder's reward, no pre-mine, pre-allocation, pre-anything, funny business, nothing. We're trying to be open, fair, honest, keep it open to all, decentralized. The downside of that is, of course, that we have no ICO, we have no founder's reward, no pre-mine, and we're very, very poor as a result. So that's Grin the project. But we can be rich in community spirit. And I'm doing this, I'm kind of saving the technology here until last, because I think the community is far more important than any kind of bits of code that we have written now. It's our best asset. You can't be bought. You can go out and try and buy your market, buy your Twitter followers, whatever your strategy is. I think that the Grin's community I kind of think of in a few layers. So at the bottom, you kind of have us toiling away on the code, making our mistakes. But on top of that, you have kind of a layer of very kind of prominent people in the space, and they're all watching us, and they're all quite ready to jump in and tell us when we've made a mistake or something has gone wrong. And I think this is just a direct result of our approach, of our no ICO and open and fair principles. So I won't go into detail about all the individual people on the project. The community structure, we have a technocratic council. Now, none of this is set in stone. This is simply where we are at this point in the project. We've put together a technocratic council because it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. As far as like membership rules, who gets in, how do people get thrown out, we haven't figured that out yet. We're not that far along, but it'll be evolving as we go. On top of that, we have contributing developers. We have many of them in this room. Quite a few of them aren't. Then we have the kind of extended community, forum frequenters, people with good ideas, putting their kind of thoughts down into the forum. The mailing list watchers, where a lot of the kind of renowned community tend to live, I think. And then of course we have the mining and hardware community. That's not a euphemism. I didn't know the nicest way to say it. But obviously there are people out there who are interested in mining Grin. To the best of our knowledge, are spending maybe millions investing in ASIC hardware and what have you. And obviously they need to be a part of this community as well. So this is kind of the state of our community at the moment. And it's challenging. All of our funding is community funding. So I've had a few personal campaigns trying to fund my development work, and those were quite successful. We have our security audit campaign that's going on at the moment. And we're going to have a lot of future needs, so and I hope this doesn't end up getting too annoying, but hopefully when Grin launches and there's kind of more pools out there and more people profiting from it, we should be on a better footing, I hope. Okay, so moving on to Grin, the technology itself. I'm not going to go through all of our features at the moment because we have quite a few speakers coming up who will be talking in more detail about the actual technologies involved in Grin. We're on our 4th testnet now. Our first testnet was, when was that? That was the beginning of this year, around December. And since then, we've gone through four iterations of the chain, getting progressively better, I hope. The first one was interesting. The second one was a bit better. The third one was better than that. And the fourth, I think, is fairly stable. It's more or less feature complete from where we want to be at this point. That's a picture of the TUI and the minor there. Go on ahead. Right, so there's a number of things in Grin at the moment. So technology-wise, we have a working chain, transaction aggregation. Now, I'm not even going to read this off. You can see it all here. And we're going to be talking about a lot of these throughout the evening. Continually out-of-date documentation. So if anybody wants to jump in and help us with that, that'd be great. I think Ashmat's going to talk about how to join Grin in the community later on. And then the future of Grin, where we're trying to go with all of this. So launch plans, when Grin, soon Grin, we don't know. And don't ask. No, it should be, it feels like it could be the early part of next year, but there's a lot of things that we need to do to put it out there because we want to make sure it's secure and it's stable, and we're not going to have an unexpected hard fork 2 days after launch or something embarrassing like that. So a lot of the core features that we wanted to put in are there. So they're not obviously not all the features we're ever going to add to Grin, but you have to draw a line somewhere and go, right, there's enough there, we need to launch, and then move on from there. The security audit, which is very important. I don't think there are a lot of coins out there who want to launch with a full security audit, especially not unfunded coins like ours. Testing bug fixes, a usable web wallet is one thing that's I should be looking at over the next couple of months as well, because we want to provide at least attempt to provide a bit of a decent user experience. PAL finalization, which John is going to talk about later on. And then just user experience and quality of life things as well. And then post-launch, we have our post-launch period. We have a lot of things planned, or we've been talking about, which is basically keeping up with this guy. This is Benedict Buns. He's come up with bulletproofs, our fly client, which is a way of syncing the chain without necessarily needing all of the header information. RSA accumulators, which is a way of pretty much eliminating most of the chain, which is just research at the moment, but if it happens, it will be a very, very big deal. Other kind of bits and pieces, vaults, confidential assets. You can have a look through our GitHub history to find all of the things that we've talked about and that might come up, and then any kind of future research that comes up as well. So, beyond Grin, let's talk about how Grin's monetary policy and how shit it is. So, beyond Grin, obviously fork Grin, make fork Grin monetary policy similar to Bitcoin or Monero, mitigate the shittiness of Grin's coin supply, 1 coin per second always, and it's 100% funded by GoGo XMR, who's promised us in this Reddit post that that's going to happen. We probably get quite a bit of this post-launch as well, so that's the point of this slide. You probably won't find many developers going to join any of these projects or forks that may happen. Not to say there won't be worthwhile forks, but this may happen post-launch. So, and then Grin the T-shirt. This is very important now. Excellent. So it's 100% combed, ring spun cotton. Heather colors contain polyester. If you're not into your synthetic fabrics, you should look out for that. Shoulders to shoulder tape. Side seamed is important because it's a better quality. Like you can get a tubular T-shirt, and it's tube shaped. Your body's not tube shaped. It doesn't quite sit so well. 100% of the profit from these goes to the Grin project. This is something come up by Blood. I don't know if that's how he wants it pronounced, but completely of his own volition, a community member went off and built this site to sell clothes. 100% of the proceeds going to Grin. He just gave us a donation of, it was about $2,500 a couple of weeks ago. So this is one way that we have of supporting us. Is that it? I think that's it. So how much time do we have? Probably quite a bit. So I went through that. Yeah, okay. So I'll throw it open to a Q&A session. Keep in mind we're going to have kind of a panel at the end as well. So, but if there's anything you want to ask me about this or anything that's here, please feel free.
Did one of your side notes said that Satoshi's trolling you? Can you explain?
Oh, which one?
It was like a couple of slides ago. He said like, I'm pretty sure Satoshi's trolling me. Something about a curve and a bonding or something.
Let's go back and find that.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so Satoshi likes to turn up once in a while to troll us about the emission curve. Like I said, I'm 99% sure it's him. It might not be, but I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here. So, okay.
So like benefiting the many and mining hardware community, how does this go together?
Well, mining is necessary. The more miners you have in a network, the more secure it is, the better the community is served. So it's kind of like, it's a balance that needs to happen. I think when John Trump is going to have a whole session about mining shortly, so he might want to answer some of these questions as well. So.
I have a question. Isn't your time wasting if you are developing a web wallet and doesn't leave that to the community? But your time must be very expensive and important to the project. So maybe isn't there time wasted if you invest time in researching and developing a web wallet?
On the web wallet itself? Possibly. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the project that I've done work on that isn't very glamorous, like the logging implementation originally, like the TUI, doing builds and all that kind of stuff. But because I'm the only paid developer in the project, there's boring stuff that needs to be done, which I'm quite happy to do. Again, like I don't actually like doing web development very much, but it's something we think is needed. If nobody's going to step up and take charge, well, that's the kind of thing that I do as well. So it's not all glamorous, but because I am paid to be full-time on it, I feel I should be, filling in the gaps here where it's not so glamorous. So, yeah.
Thanks for the presentation, and I'm also very pleased by the code quality so far. I'm learning Rust on the side right now, and it's really pleasing to learn it reading the code. My question was about the security audit. How I haven't found too much research on that right now. How you select which firm you're gonna give that money to, and how can we be sure that this firm is actually capable of doing such a security audit?
Yeah, we're just talking about that now. I mean, obviously the money has to be there first before we can do much about it. But we're planning on having a tender process, a very public one as well. So you contract a company for $100,000, you want to make them work for it a little bit. So they'll have a tender process. We'll expect them to be pitching for it and telling us what they're going to be giving us, what they're going to be adding to it, and then we'll probably be making those public and make a decision from there, basically. Oh, well, HashMaps has the next presentation is going to be all about that, how people can help and get involved. So I'll leave that to him. My kids are keeping me up at night for the most part. It's hard to say. Personally, I've never launched a blockchain before, so I'm probably a bit naive going into this. I do find the concept of actually having a launch quite scary. I don't know what's going to happen after that. I don't think anybody does. I think everyone on the team would probably feel the same way. So that's about all the answer I can give.
Any more questions?
Is there a guarantee you can give maybe in terms of time between the announcement of when you're going to launch and the actual launch? Like we're not going to launch within less than, I don't know, 6 weeks or whatever from the announcement to the actual launch date?
I'm not sure. I don't think we've actually discussed that. Whatever it is, there'll be plenty of notice. Like we're not going to spring it on people and say next week we're launching. Like there'll definitely be a time period. I can't say exactly what that is, but it wouldn't be in the spirit of the project to sneak it up or to sneak it in there for next week or something. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.